because if you look at it last year versus this year and you're trying to apply that same information, then it could have already changed, right? It could have changed already.
I'll tell you right now, this is some of the fastest changing information that happens so regularly. Most raters are overwhelmed with a lot of changes that are happening. Veterans are overwhelmed with the changes that are happening. Sometimes the changes are for the good, sometimes the changes are for the bad, you know, and sometimes they just don't know until the actual changes are effective that's been in place for years. And then they make a change to try to either get better or think you're getting better and actually get worse. But at the end of the day, you're still serving the veteran population. And as long as we're putting the best foot forward, that's not always the best answer. But I will tell you, a lot of times the changes are made for the better.
Absolutely, definitely. I mean, that's always the hope, right? That's always the hope that the change is made for the better. But the question I have for you here is that since it's so vast and so hard for veterans to really understand the 38 CFR, you know, literally they have their own lives, right? They have their own lives, they have their own careers. You know, that's literally for professionals that do that on a daily basis. But however, our veterans need to receive the maximum ratings for their claims. So how can they best equip themselves with enough comprehension of the claim and the CFR process to receive the highest possible rating?
Great question. Well, I'll give you the first don't, right? Don't listen to scuttlebutt talk, right? Don't listen to the rumor mill. Frankly, about time you got that rumor, that regulation has changed 3-4 times over by the time you're getting started, right? So that's the first don't. But the first do is to simply log in onto va.gov to get the simplistic information that's digestible for you and know what benefits that you're offered. That's number one, okay? Typical criteria is always there, right? So understanding that initial criteria is the basics. Understanding those typical criteria are the basics. Once you go through the first initial criteria, and if you qualify, you know, go through the process, right? And then at that point, like you said, try to seek subject matter expert help. Though we all think we can change the plumbing in our house or again, change out an engine in our car. Well, I'll tell you, let's leave some of that to the professionals, right? Because there's always a missing screw, missing washer, or frankly, a leak that is happening within the home. So sometimes getting that professional help does assist as well, because once you have went through the criteria, now you want to get to the nuts and bolts of things. And a lot of times, if you're not doing this day to day, it gets a little cumbersome. Gets a little overwhelming, and you then are not putting your best foot forward and putting yourself in position of success. But now just understanding the basics by logging on to va.gov, understanding what you can apply for, what you should be able to be eligible for, and so on and so forth. That is the first step. That's
definitely the first step. So, no, wonderful information that you're providing them here, and I always want to kind of push you to continue to provide them more and more value. So what we want to make sure we understand as well about the 38 CFR, which you definitely successfully kind of alluded to, is that it determines the rating criteria, right? So, you know, you talk about scuttlebutt talk and different things, right? We're talking about, you know, there's rumors about, hey, I can get 80 or 90% for tinnitus and different things like that. That 38 CFR can actually dispel some of those myths and actually break down how you can get a certain rating for a particular condition. So I wanted you to kind of elaborate a little bit more on how that CFR kind of breaks that down.
Oh yeah, true indeed. So there is obviously criteria there, right? And conditions, right? Whether if it's a knee, whether if it's a back, whether if it's mental ailments, whether if it's anything that it's related to your military's ailments. Okay, well, when you break that down and go through all the criteria, it pretty much gives you the outline of what's needed to, one, get to the next higher available percentage, and also to keep you where you are, right? So understanding that, right, I always want to make sure that when you are reading these things and when you are understanding it, make sure that you are understanding it to its fullest ability, because doing half the work is only going to get you half the results, right? So just because you see a back condition that is going to be produced at 40% and you had back surgery, and your back surgery has really put you in a position where that your back is in pain every single day. You wake up every single day from carrying that rucksack that you had. Now you had that slipped disc, and now you've had surgical procedures on it, and now your back is to the point where you're in pain. Well, you may or may not still fit that criteria to get to the next highest available of the 40%. Your subject matter expert job is to be able to decipher that and see how you can be able to get there, or how we can position you to get to where you need to go. But if they're not understanding the 38 CFR at a basic level of that nature, I don't know if we should be even speaking with them first and foremost. But secondarily, understanding the steps on how to do so. And how do we do that? There's also another guide called the Warm's Manual. The M21 Warm's Manual, okay? And that manual there is pretty much the guidelines or the Bible of that 38 CFR. So typically, again, if there is a 38 CFR regulation there is a Warm's Manual step on how to complete that action there. Okay. So you can have a regulation code that tells you on how to provide an effective date. Right? We can take a look at that. It's very simple. Well, what is the guidelines that actually shows you how to do so? Or what is the guidelines on how to provide duty to assist? Or what are the guidelines that are going to be able to effectively push your PACT Act claim? Well, how do we check if it's a PACT Act? What are the VA doing to check if it's a PACT Act? Well, if you don't know those simple corresponding aspects of things, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to maximize and produce a successful claim that is only half the effort. So when we're looking at the 38 CFR, that is just part of it. There's different components that you really want to study, dive into, and effectively make sure that the team that you're working with is assisting you to the highest level.
Oh man, a lot of great information there. Save the good information to the end of the video, right? That's a wonderful concept for us here. So again, even more information here we want to provide to you here. And what I want you to do, Kenneth, is I guess you introduced the Warm's Manual. I want to see if you could actually give them like a particular example of how that would actually apply. And, I have, a condition we can kind of go off of, like maybe like back condition and something, and, how that's referenced in the CFR and how that's also applied in the Warm's Manual, right? And how that works, right?